The read, play, learn spaces are so important because kids need to just bathe in books and early literacy development, and they need to have it all around them so that they feel and can just be immersed in learning wherever they are.
When you give them those opportunities, those brains just fire and get excited, and they get an attitude toward learning that is likely to create a lifelong desire to learn.
Replied her daddy. We know it is never too early to start reading, singing, and talking to our children, and hopefully every child will have a better chance to grow up in a language-rich environment.
We are at the Vel R. Phillips Youth and Family Justice Center installing a family read, play, and learn center. So when families are in the waiting areas, they have something to do with their children, to engage them, as well as maybe take some of the edge off of the stressfulness of the situation that they may be in.
We're all in agreement that the early years of life are some of the most formative for children, and the more that we can do to provide families with information and education around how important they are in their children's lives is kind of what we all believe.
We know that not everybody can make it to a brick and mortar library during open hours. So we're really excited for these kinds of opportunities in the community to connect with folks in a way that's convenient and easy for them.
We talk to families in our city and describe the situation and ask them to put themselves in those shoes and what would they want to look up and see. And so this really is a community and a collective effort, and I'm really proud of it.
Just to see a program that started in a laundromat now come to family court, and hopefully what we launched today will just be the first reading space in a family court, and far from the last.
I hope all kinds of businesses and community organizations get involved with this initiative because it brings learning to families right where they are. It breaks down barriers and it increases access to early learning, which is critical for our children.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our summit, Reimagining Together, Learning in Everyday Spaces. I'm Patty Miller, CEO of Too Small to Fail, the early education initiative of the Clinton Foundation. And I'm so thrilled to be joined here today with Brian Wallace, the CEO of the Coin Laundry Association. Hey, Brian.
Good afternoon, Patty. We're having a lot of fun
you.
here on going into the third session.
So exciting to be back here for the third session. Thank you all so much for joining us. And what we'd really love to know right now is where are you joining us from? So please join us on the chat and just tell us where you're zooming in from. We'd love to know. At Too Small to Fail, we promote early brain and language development by supporting parents and caregivers with tools so they can talk, read, and sing with their young children starting at birth, from the moment they're born. To do that, we forge relationships across sectors, often with really unlikely partners. And one of our strategies is focused on place-based innovation. Today, we're going to actually focus on the role that businesses and associations can play in supporting our collective efforts in that area. How are they thinking about social impact generally? And how are they thinking about issues affecting working families? We're going to discuss place-based innovation, focus on early childhood literacy, and how they can help businesses achieve diversity and inclusion goals. We're also going to discuss impact, how doing well by doing good can impact the bottom line. And we're also going to explore a concept called return on purpose. And we'll explore what scaling looks like in a specific sector, the laundry industry. Then we're going to switch gears a little bit and take a deep dive with some really wonderful human-centered design experts. Because what we really want to do is think about what happens once the summit is over, and how do we get started in our own neighborhoods across the country? What does it mean to design with communities? So we're going to explore that a little bit later on. And we're going to finish up by hearing some exciting new partnerships that will be announced during the session today. And we hope those partnerships will really encourage you to think about partnership in your own communities and what those might look like. We have a really terrific lineup of speakers and panelists, and we want to get started right away. But before we do, we wanted just to provide very briefly some context about what happened on the first 2 days of the summit. So let's just quickly start with day one. Day one was terrific because we were able to lift up the voices of an amazing group of parents. They shared more about their hopes and wishes for their neighborhood businesses and spaces, the places that they go with their children all the time, and when they felt welcomed and when they didn't. We also talked a little bit about research that demonstrates stark inequities by neighborhood and the impact that has on young children's learning. And we also heard some innovative approaches to use this research to unleash resilience and some innovative partnerships to support families. Next slide, please. On day two, we kicked things off with the wonderful president of Disney Imagineering. She spoke about their pioneering, innovative, and successful efforts to really think about all that they do to center the voice of families, their customers, and honestly, just everything that they're thinking about. It was very powerful. And her insights and inspiration provided just such wonderful context and framing for our panel that followed. Next slide, please. That really looked at family-friendly, learning-rich environments and what the ingredients of those environments look like. We heard from designers and architects and researchers. And what was really great about this session is that in real time, they actually created a neighborhood intersection. So we could see these ingredients in action. It was just terrific. Next slide, please. We then did some deep dives into community-wide approaches to listening and co-designing with families in both Philadelphia and Chicago. And then we had a fantastic bonus session with a wonderful organization called Public Color. And they talked a lot about the role that color can play in supporting children and families, and how color actually can impact behavior change. It was an action-packed, fun-filled day. Next slide, please. And through the session, we were thrilled to hear from all of you. Such great comments and insights and questions. And as we move forward in today's session, we encourage you to engage with the chat. We want to hear from you. We want to hear what you're thinking about, what's inspiring, what questions you might have. And we also encourage you to use the app to get more conference materials and resources that will help you think about reimagining your own spaces. And so now, without further ado, I'm going to turn the mic over to Brian Wallace to walk us through today's sessions. Over to you, Brian.
Well, thanks, Patty, and what an outstanding recap for us. And it's really amazing how much has gotten accomplished, but I want to recognize also, we're very happy to have many of you joining us for the first time today. So we're going to make sure that you stay caught up on all the good things that we've got going on. Here's the schedule. Patty did a nice job previewing all the things we've got packed into our day today. So there'll be every opportunity to learn about the work that's preceded us here and what we're looking to do going forward, especially with bringing cross-sector partnerships together. Patty and I have come to say to folks, if the laundromat industry can do it, anyone can do it, right? A very unexpected place to make connections to benefit children and families. And we want to take a look at who else can join us in that movement. So it's going to be a great day today. And just another reminder that you have all been so engaged and given us so much energy that we've added another bonus session immediately following the summit today. So you can stick around, join us in a Zoom room to share reflections, ask questions, and just sort of continue the conversation. So we found that with the chat and social media, you're all so engaged, we wanted to give ourselves a little bit more time. So that's always a good thing, Patty.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we got a lot to get to, so I'll stop there. But first, we have a very special welcome. I'm very happy to have Michelle Mason with us to join this conversation about reimagining everyday spaces. Michelle serves as president and CEO of ASAE, the Center for Association Leadership. ASAE is a membership organization of more than 47,000 association professionals representing more than 6,400 organizations. I'm a proud longtime member of ASAE, and I know that Michelle really values the profession and what we can do to give back through associations. And Michelle joining us today is really a reflection of work that's happened since the last summit, where we've looked at ways to tap into other associations that have reach into everyday spaces to have them join our movement. So let's hear the welcome from Michelle Mason.
Welcome to day 3 of the 2021 Too Small to Fail Summit. I am Michelle Mason, President and CEO of ASAE, the American Society for Association Executives. As the largest organization representing trade and professional associations in the world, part of ASAE's mission is to support association leaders working to make a difference in the world. So it's really an honor to be the opening speaker today, and I commend Too Small to Fail, the Clinton Foundation, and the Laundry Cares Foundation for their efforts to promote learning in everyday spaces for children and families. ASAE was proud to recognize the Laundry Cares Foundation in 2020 with our highest association honor, the Summit Awards, for its efforts in partnership with Too Small to Fail to support childhood literacy in laundromats. The Summit Awards are part of ASAE's Power of Association initiative, which promotes the vital role associations play in the economy and in supporting communities and improving our collective quality of life. ASAE is committed to creating a deeper understanding and appreciation for the association sector among policymakers, the media, business leaders, and other key audiences. While their core purposes may be to advance a specific industry or profession, associations are often able to go above and beyond their mission and put their members' expertise and other resources to work where society needs them the most. The more that policymakers and other influential audiences understand our work, the more support we have in carrying out our inspirational and life-changing initiatives. Given the vast number and variety of associations that represent the daily spaces and businesses that families frequent, from laundromats to grocery stores, convenience stores, and also public parks, associations are uniquely positioned to be part of this important conversation on how we can best engage children and families by meeting them where they are. The past 18 months have been so incredibly challenging for families, particularly low-income families and families of color. In addition to worries and anxieties related to COVID-19, many families are experiencing new financial hardships as a result of the economic downturn created by this pandemic. Many parents are trying to look for new jobs or simply change careers entirely, while at the same time taking care of their children with fewer caregiver resources and supporting their school-aged children through homeschooling or remote learning. That is a tremendous amount of pressure and stress on families. So what you're doing is so important. And the conversations you're having here at the summit are incredibly important and much, much needed in our society. ASAE looks forward to continuing the conversation with you and working to build association and cross-sector partnerships to support families and young children. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce Brian Holland, president and co-founder of the Laundry Cafe in Philadelphia, a shining example of local store ownership, business leadership, and Corn Laundry Association board member who has made his mission to use his business to serve the pressing needs of children and families in the Philly community. Brian goes beyond viewing the patrons as customers to really see them as allies in the important work of helping kids thrive. Welcome, Brian.
Well, thank you, Michelle. Thank you so kindly. I am Brian Holland, and I am also the vice chair for the Coin Laundry Association and the secretary for the Laundry Cares Foundation. So thank you for having me. I'm so pleased to be here. I can't be more pleased to see what has happened to this association and to this collaboration between the Too Small to Fail campaign and the Coin Laundry Association over the past few years. I'm going to be moderating today, and I've got a session called Doing Well by Doing Good. And we're super privileged to be joined by Sarah Adams and Cheryl Oldham. Sarah Adams is Senior Director of Marketing Communications for Chief Executives for Corporate Purpose. I love that name. And we also have Cheryl Oldham, who is VP of Education Policy at U.S. Chamber of Commerce, but she is concurrently Senior Director at the Center for Education and Workforce at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. So I'm super pleased to have them with us. You'll hear from them in a moment. So I have an other role. I think you heard Michelle just allude to it a moment ago, is that I'm the proud co-owner of 5 supersized laundries in Philadelphia. And I couldn't be more honored and pleased to be in the communities that we serve. This was really the brainstorm of me and my colleagues, who also were from Big Pharma. So the 3 of us came from Big Pharma jobs, and none of us knew anything about laundry. But we came to know that healthcare disparities were very real in America through the jobs we did in pharma, all in senior level positions. And we 3 came from hard hit areas. So I came from Chester, Pennsylvania, which is the 6th most economically depressed city in the nation at one point. Ray Chamberlain came from East St. Louis, and Tyrone Akins, my original partner from the beginning, came from Newark, New Jersey. So our experiences in Big Pharma and recognizing these disparities was a little different. But we said in our second lives, we wanted to affect meaningful change in these underserved communities. And we happened upon laundry to do that. And so let me tell you a little bit about the Laundry Cafe. So we think we're a little bit of a different animal because our focus is wholly and squarely on community. Commerce is important, community is even more important. And we've got 5 pillars that we focus on. And they are healthcare disparities, obviously, because of our backgrounds, unbanked communities, the digital divide and access, voter apathy, and childhood literacy. And childhood literacy, I can't tell you how important it is. That is why we're here today, because childhood literacy actually affects more than one generation if you get it right. And so we knew from early on that we wanted to build a different kind of place that embraced local families, that embraced children, that made a safe place for women. In fact, we started out building our very first store, and we had a woman architect because we knew that you never want a situation where men are going to design something when your target audience is 85% women. And from there, we realized that children are elemental to our stores, or should be. And so they should be welcomed and celebrated, not treated as though that, they're an entity to be fought with or challenged by. And so we went about building stores, and we included books and play spaces and homework stations, and we had free Wi-Fi even at a time. This was in 2012, free Wi-Fi and computer stations around the store for kids to get their homework done. And you come to find out very quickly that parents and families celebrate those business entities that welcome them, right? So that you have a smile and they feel truly welcome into the store. And 2, parents and particularly moms are excited about having places where kids can be occupied in something productive while they're there. So my goal really is to say to each of you that anyone can do this, that this is about empowerment, this is about taking action, this is really all about kids and fun, and it really doesn't take a lot to get started. So I'll give you a personal experience on how this is meaningful, and it truly has enduring impact. And so I'm going to tell you about an example of Stephanie, who was one of our student customers. And Stephanie would come into the store all the time, but she never had clothes. And I came to notice after a while that she was there really to do her homework. So she would quietly sneak by the front desk and go to the back thinking that she was imposing. She wasn't. And she'd get her homework done. And finally I approached her and said, "Hey, what's going on here? What makes you come here?" She says, "The free Wi-Fi." And so we created this relationship between her and the other business partners. We helped her with her homework, with math, and personally with papers and things. Well, Stephanie was there to use the free Wi-Fi and the computers, and she ultimately graduated. Since then, she has since written us just this past summer to say she not only graduated from high school, but from college. She's now getting engaged, and she's bringing her sister to live with her so that she can have the similar experience with education. And so I say this all to you to let you know that there are very little things that you can do in small businesses that allow the local community not only to embrace you, but to appreciate you. And that has had meaningful impact on our store's growth. So we have now 5 locations in 8-9 years, and they're all doing super well. And we are committed. We have a deep abiding commitment to serve communities. And so that's why we're here today, to kind of open up the doors and I let you see behind the kimono that there's things that you can do, and it's not always all orchestrated. It's sometimes you just step out. And so I'm grateful to Too Small to Fail campaign for providing resources. I'm grateful for the Coin Laundry Association. So let's get into the session where we bring big business into the picture. So now with us, we have both Cheryl and Sarah. I'm going to invite each of them to offer just a quick overview about how they will bring the resources from big business to bear on small spaces and helping to transform them. So why don't we start with Cheryl? Cheryl, tell us a little bit about you and your roles.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brian, and thank you all for having me today and having the Chamber and Chamber Foundation here represented. As Brian said, my name is Cheryl Oldham, the Vice President of Education Workforce Policy at the Chamber. For those who might not be familiar, the Chamber is the largest association representing the interests of business in the country. Importantly, not only do we represent over 3 million businesses of all sizes and sectors all across the country in every region, we also have state and local chambers of commerce and American chambers abroad. And so the network is very large. I also have another role, which Brian alluded to, which is running the Center for Education and Workforce in the Chamber Foundation. And that is where we get to really dig in on the toughest, most difficult challenges we face in the education and workforce sector, everything from early childhood education and childcare all the way up through workforce training. And we really try to look at ways to transform the systems and engage the business community in doing so. So look forward to talking more about the early literacy and childcare space. Thanks.
Cheryl, thank you. And Sarah, can you tell us a little bit about your role, Senior Director of Marketing Communications and Chief Executives for Corporate Purpose? Again, I love that name. It's a pretty incredible commitment.
We love the name too. I mean, we were founded as Committee Encouraging Corporate Philanthropy about 20 years ago. So it speaks to the evolution over time. And our goal, we are a nonprofit, but we advise companies on the role they play in society. So how they're using their skills and resources to solve societal challenges. So what that looks like every day, we're on the phone and answering emails from companies with key questions they have on their strategies to invest in society. So we're helping them on their corporate purpose journeys. And it looks a little different for every single company. You think about their skills and resources and what unique ways they can address societal challenges. Absolutely. They're thinking about their stakeholders. They're thinking about their employees, first and foremost. They're thinking about their communities in which they operate. And then all the other things that they impact. And it really has changed over time to the way we think about it is they can solve societal challenges through their business. And we work with just about half of the Fortune 500. So the world's largest companies, global brands that we know. Some are business to business, but a lot are the consumer brands you know of. And we track what our companies are doing, and they are engaged in $23 billion of community investment every year. So I can talk more about that in a little bit, but that's the high level of CECB.
So we are going to come back to the resources in a moment, but I'm super excited to hear that we've got big business that's leaning in to help to address these issues. Cheryl, let's go with you though. So the Chamber's focused on early childhood education in the past few years through the center, which you lead at the Chamber Foundation. Yet the pandemic's a catastrophic impact on a sector, which is significant decrease in capacity, estimates for more than 1 million women forced out of the workforce due to lack of childcare. It seems that this has really raised up or accelerated your work in the area. Can you please just share a little bit about the Chamber's overall approach to childcare and supporting young children and families?
Absolutely. And I could talk about this for hours. So I will try to be really brief. We started this about 4 or 5 years ago, and it really was this idea that childcare is a two-generation issue. It is about our current workforce and supporting working parents and ensuring they're able to be comfortable and know their children are safe somewhere and be productive in the workforce. But it's also about our future workforce and that really important educational foundation that childcare quality childcare plays for them. And you know, we did a lot in that space. We started to dig into the economic impact to individual states when childcare breaks down, and it's massive. And then the pandemic hit, and I think it elevated this issue from
Definitely
possibly where, you know, the employer community might have been thinking more about it as a personal issue for an individual, not necessarily a business issue for them prior to the pandemic. The pandemic really brought this to the forefront and has made, I think, the interest from the employer community all that much more acute. It has also translated into a much larger focus on advocacy in the policy space. I mean, the chamber has been extremely active in supporting the issue of childcare in terms of stimulus dollars, the need to support the sector, the need to invest in this space. And that really, you know, it started with our work in the foundation, but it has translated into both the policy and advocacy space as well.
Sure. So it's interesting because, you know, the pandemic, for all the challenges that it created, but it revealed some of the cracks that we have. So, you know, all of a sudden we can see just how important teachers are to the total system, right? You can see how difficult it is to homeschool. You can see the impact of withdrawing women from the workforce. All of those things really have just come to bear and come to fore because of pandemic and so much more visible. Sarah. Okay, so your name encapsulates your focus so perfectly. Chief Executives for Corporate Purpose, with the tagline, creating a better world through business. According to your website, the CECP is a movement with more than 200 of the world's largest companies that represent 11.2 trillion in revenues, 23 billion in total community investment, 14 million employees, 30 million hours of employee engagement, and 21 trillion in assets under management. That's a heck of a lot of firepower, right? Mm-hmm. Can you tell us more about your member company's approach to social impact and how it's evolved over time? And then also, how does education fit into that?
Right. As I mentioned, we started even 20 years ago and probably even 10 years ago, we were talking about philanthropy and charity and check writing. And so much has happened in the last decade where companies are really thinking about community investment, societal investment, engagement in solving societal challenges as a core business strategy. This is woven through their whole DNA. It is something the CEO talks about, and it's something that people on the front lines understand when they work at that company. So it really has changed from that siloed approach of maybe corporate responsibility or foundation to something that touches the CFO, the IR department, HR, communications, corporate responsibility, sustainability. I mean, it proliferates throughout the company when it's done well. And I mean, we're tracking different things like the Edelman Trust Barometer that says that today my employer is the most trusted institution. So it speaks to the fact that this is not just something that's nice to do from a company perspective, that this is job number one, to think about the world in which you operate. So, you know, a big shift. And then it's, of course, over the last 18 months, even more so, that companies are saying, we have a role here to play. We are nimble, we're flexible, we can solve societal challenges, we're logistics experts, we can get things out to the front lines of a disaster. We can look out for our people, we can ask our employees what they need, we can look out for our community, we can be there to help. So, and we've been tracking a lot of what our companies have been doing. We have a Giving a Number survey that we've been running for almost 20 years now. And we're digging into the findings now from 2020. And we're seeing that, as always, education is one of the top issue areas that companies are focused on. 30% of our companies say that education is their top priority area in terms of the way they invest in society. And they see this as a pipeline issue. But I think even more over the last year, they knew they needed to step in their communities and just fill some of those gaps that were exposed through COVID and the racial equity conversations we've had over the last year. At 23%, that's health and social services is the other issue that companies say is a big focus area, because they understand Without a healthy community, you don't have a healthy business.
That is so
Yeah, and we're also tracking too that the growth in the investment in society grew over 41% last year because of the year we had. They were donating a lot of product, so like PPE, personal protective equipment. Companies were there, and you saw in the headlines every day when something happened in the news, companies were speaking up and stepping up and saying, "We can do something about this."
Love that. And it really does take the leadership of corporate executives to, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment, who actually it is that makes those types of decisions. Cheryl, let me start. I'm going to ask this question of both Sarah and Cheryl, but Cheryl, let's start with you. So your organization is a membership organization with member companies of all shapes and sizes across industries spanning both telecom and retail and manufacturing, financial services. Who is it that really cares? So who is it that cares about childhood and early childhood and supporting working families and communities and these companies? Is it the C-suite? Is it a C-suite issue? Is it a marketing issue? Is it a corporate social responsibility issue, the foundation? Who really owns it? Who takes it on?
I think it's all of the above. I loved what Sarah said, which was, a lot of these issues, particularly education issues, started out years ago as very much in the corporate social responsibility world. And it has shifted. I've been at the Chamber for a decade. We have a Center for Corporate Citizenship, and they would say this as well. There has been a shift from this is a nice to do, we want to be a good citizen and support communities, to this is very much connected to our business. And so I would say it's all of the above. And I think particularly, as you said, with regard to the pandemic, that has made that all the more important. It's supporting your working parents in ways that are necessary now. And we hear it all the time from all sizes, whether it's big companies, small companies. They know they need to get into the space. What can we do? What are our options? We're not childcare providers. So where do we start? How do I support my working parents? I know I want to, I need to, I know it's important for their productivity and my bottom line, and I just know it's the right thing to do. Where do I start? And I think that's, I think oftentimes the advocacy community in particular goes straight to business needs to provide on-site childcare, and that's just not an option for the vast majority of our membership, who are of all sizes, small, very small to very large. And so we have tried to put some resource behind that to specifically help employers. Here are the steps you can take. These are the very first thing you need to do if you're an employer saying, how do I support my working parents, is survey your employees. Know who your employees are and ask them what they need and want. Because in many instances, what they need is flexibility. They don't need you to provide a childcare site for their kid. They need you to provide them some flexibility so that they can do the things they need to do. Or if you're in one of those industries where predictive scheduling is all you need, right? I just need to know what my schedule is going to be like from week to week. So then I can make the arrangements that I need to make. It really is, we have sort of talked about it as this childcare equation. And one little piece of that equation falls off, the whole thing falls apart. And so employers are a really important piece of that equation.
Absolutely. And it's funny because we're talking about childhood literacy and creative play spaces, but that is inextricably connected to, having childcare, right? You can't get to one without the other. So Sarah, same question for you, if you would.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think it's all the above, but I think what we've been doing at CCP is helping explain that business case to the company to say, why does the CEO need to care? Why does HR need to care? Why does IR and the investor relations need to care? So we're helping them figure out, okay, what are your core business challenges? And here's how investing in society can help you solve those business challenges. So we have a few different reports and have leaned on research in the industry that says this helps with your brand. If you are a good corporate citizen and when someone goes to the grocery store and looks at products, they will pick a product if they remember, oh, this brand did something good in society. They helped out my community. That helps purchase decisions. So across the board at the company, there's a long list of business case reasons why you should invest in the community.
Absolutely. Okay, now we're in a lightning round. We got about 5 minutes, so we're going to keep them short, but we're going to still hit them. Okay, so first of all, I'll go with Cheryl. Research is clear. We've heard it from Emma Dorn at McKinsey last week. Also, dual pandemics of COVID and social unrest have had a debilitating impact on learning loss. That's huge, particularly among low-income children and children of color. At the same time, it's estimated that 2/3 of working parents had changed their childcare arrangements, and up to 75% of working parents had children under 6 staying at home, with only 10% using childcare centers. What type of innovative approaches are you seeing employers use to support parents to help mitigate learning loss, particularly parents of color? So this is the lightning round.
Well, I think one of the biggest things, at least coming from the corporate community, the employer community, is this investment and interest, and not just interest, but investment and support for connectivity, for broadband throughout all of this. Like, that was a key breakdown for kids, and why that learning loss occurred. You also see employers stepping in to provide those supports to parents that they need. You can't, of course, that learning loss is going to continue if you're not A, in a safe environment, B, in a quality environment. And so to the extent that employers are either investing or supporting by providing those benefits to their working parents. And then thirdly, I would say in a policy and advocacy space, the business community is a really, really important leader and voice. And I think particularly when it comes to an issue like this, where it's kids, where you might think, why is the business community, lending their voice to this advocacy agenda? When they do, policymakers listen.
There you go. Okay, and interesting, I think there's statistics now that says in communities of color, the learning loss because of COVID is over a full year. And that's not like a summer learning loss, that's a full year. So Sarah, return on purpose, interesting concept, right? So how does the role of place, this concept of meeting parents and families where they are as employees or customers or community members, how does this role of place fit in? What's the business case for investing in communities look like?
Yeah, and I mentioned a little bit of it, but I think it just continues. I mean, we did research on brand, and we looked at a variety of metrics, but we looked at what makes a company high purpose, and we did the research on their financial results, and companies that demonstrated a higher purpose, they grew faster. They grew their market value faster. I mean, it's clear, that whenever we would say, what's the business case? We're like, the business case has been made. Now let's move forward. I mean, this is something, and we actually brought CEOs together over the last year in roundtables once a month so they could talk to their peers. And time again, they said, our company is going to make it through this because we focused on employees. That is job number one, focus on our employees. As Cheryl said, talk to them, ask them what they need, have the town halls, sit down with them, their parents, their community members. They are on the front lines. They know what's going on, especially our frontline workers. And the employees said, this is what we need. And I'm sure you've heard the concept of the Great Resignation. People are leaving jobs because they've had a moment to reflect and think about what they need out of their life. And you want to retain them now. That's the biggest business case, is keep them there. It takes a lot of money to train new staff. So what do they need to have a valuable experience and understand that your company cares for you? That time and time again, it's like, focus on your people. That's where the magic is.
I've got one last one, and we'll wrap up. But this was for the audience. So what opportunities should our audience be thinking about, either in terms of working with local businesses and or business leaders themselves? Hopefully you can help our audience who's watching. Cheryl?
Say real quickly and make it brief is, if you're in a community, I think, chambers are a great place to gather and convene, and they're leaders in their community. And that's where other companies go and expect value. And they are they're involved in both policy and advocacy, but also programming in order to support communities. So that's a good place to start.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And your last word?
Yeah, and I think from our side, just get to know the companies in your community. They are community members and they want to be good community partners. So figure out what they're focused on. It's on their websites. Find out what their issue areas are. And if there's alignment, they want to have a conversation with you. And their employees are community members. And even if they're focused on different topic areas, they do want to know what their employees care about. And their employees are part of those organizations locally. So I think just get to know those companies. They want to know you.
Sarah, Cheryl, you guys have been awesome. I think it's so encouraging to know that, you know, there are corporate leaders who are embracing these problems just as local level businesses are trying to, and others. And we're so pleased to see that you're focused at that. Really, there's intellectual capital being dedicated to getting these challenges addressed. So thank you. So now I'm going to wrap this up, but I'm also going to turn it over to Brian Wallace for more in-depth conversation about laundromat sector and how we've worked to scale literacy rich places through environment and impact on these spaces have had on businesses. So Brian, back to you.
All right, Brian Holland, amazing job. Thank you. That whole conversation was music to our ears.
Absolutely.
From the corner laundromat to the boardroom, we all have a role to play in this effort. So thanks very much. And it is my pleasure to host this next panel, Scaling in Laundromats, What Will It Take? And I think I should start with, because some of you are new to this conversation, I think I'll start with just a quick version of our origin story. How did this all happen? Well, the Coin Laundry Association is a membership organization representing the laundromat industry. We've got about a 60-year history. Several years ago, some of us got together and said, you know, this industry has been so good to us and has given us so much opportunity. We really need to find a way to give back and give back in an impactful way, particularly to the families that patronize our businesses every week. And so we formed the foundation, Laundry Cares, with more of kind of an aspirational standpoint. But I'll be the first to admit, we didn't know how to live that mission quite yet. That is until I received a phone call from Jane Park at Too Small to Fail, a cold call saying, is this crazy, or wouldn't laundromats be a great way to connect resources into the communities that need them most, particularly when it comes to early childhood development and literacy? And so we were only smart enough to say yes, and that kicked off this last 5 or 6 year journey that brings us to today, where we have our free laundry and literacy day events. We have our family read, play, learn centers, which are, picture a mini library space with laundromats that are delivering books, having programs being hosted by local libraries or other literacy advocates. And it's really been incredible. We're well over the 100 mark now. And every day, more and more organizations are reaching out, more and more business owners are reaching out, wanting to do this in their own stores. We have nearly 1,000 laundromats that have raised their hand through our network and said, I want to be a community-friendly laundromat. Please make me aware of opportunities in my area. So this is really exploded. And obviously this time around with the summit, we're talking about all everyday spaces and using the laundromat example. And I hope that this conversation, which is going to be fast, is going to really give you some ideas about not only scaling in laundromats, but applying that to some of these other everyday spaces. And so I've got a great panel, and I'm going to bring them on one at a time. We're going to see a quick picture of each of them in action, and then we're going to have that conversation with them. So first is Brian Grell, yet another Brian associated with the industry. So we'll look at a couple of pictures of Brian here in action at our Free Laundry Day events. Brian is chairman-elect of our foundation, but has spent a 40-year career in the laundromat industry and has really done a lot of great work, both as a business owner, as a equipment distributor in the last 20 plus years, as a co-founder of one of the largest finance companies in our industry, and has built a tremendous business helping small businesses like laundromats get started, and has been a real ambassador for our program. We talk about being CEO. Well, Brian is our Chief Enthusiasm Officer, as you can see here at our live events. So Brian, why don't you come on, and I'd love for you to, from your perspective, tell us a little bit how this Laundry Cares effort came together and what impact you've seen over the last couple of years on this industry that we both love.
Thank you, Brian, for the introduction. And so, Brian, thank you for your energy and passion, because it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be here today also. It was about 6 years ago. I had joined the board a number of years ago, and I heard about Laundry Cares. It was founded a number of years ago, but it remained dormant, silent, nothing was being done. And then we sat around and said, well, what can we do? And we talked about, well, let's do a free laundry day. So I reached out to one of the leaders in our industry who owned a very large store out on Long Island. And with a little coercion and emphasis, we got him to agree to take on this undertaking of a free laundry day. Now, that day, Brian, as you mentioned, we had no idea what we were doing. We were just going to have a fun event. Thank God we had a laundry owner that was so engaged and so positive and did everything to help it. So in summary, that day, Brian, was August 31st, 2015, and that's where I got to meet Jane Park and the three of us, and 70 other volunteers in our industry flew in from around the country to attend this free laundry day and not knowing what it was. And during that day, we served 535 people. We did over 25,000 pounds of laundry that day. We had live DJs. We had a radio station, an Hispanic radio station, broadcast live. We had the police force across the street come over and wanted to see what we're doing. We had lines to get into the parking lot. We had everything going on: face painting, castles, free food. It was basketball and all kinds of entertainment. And what happened that day was supposed to be a free laundry day, Brian. What really changed us is though when we noticed that Jane came and she set up a tent, and it was reading with children tent. Said, okay, set up a tent. What will come of this? And what we noticed and what we observed, and that picture in your background right there of reading with the children, is so telling of what took place that day. We were blown away how many parents noticed their children reading with our volunteers, so that the parents are able to go get their food and the parents are able to go get their laundry done while we were reading, and Jane and her staff were reading with the children. Never saw anything like it. Never thought that Free Laundry Day would be the birth of literacy in laundry. And it was the combination of now having done several dozen of these free laundry days around the country. There is nothing like a free laundry day. And I'm just hoping that someday we can have others experience what we have experienced.
Absolutely. Well, you see where I was talking about with Chief Enthusiasm Officer Brian kind of willed this all into existence, and we'll always be so thankful for that. But we're going to keep this lightning round going. Thanks, Brian. We're going to next talk to Paul Hansen from right here in Chicago. But we'll look at this this picture here too. Paul, you're a third generation laundromat owner. You have 5 locations under the Su Nueva Lavanderia brand. And you've hosted free laundry days. You've got the Family Replay Learn Centers, countless other opportunities. Here's where we got to all do some free laundry together with our friends at the Laundry Project about a month or 2 ago. So Paul, we'll have you come on screen now, and you have a habit of saying yes to everything when it comes to community involvement. And I know that you're a business person first, and you need to have these laundromats make money. So, can you tell us why you've made this community involvement such a priority, and what it's done for you in the community, but also how it's impacted your business?
Oh, well, I think it's impacted the business. When I first started doing these, it was just kind of somebody contacted me. Jason from the Laundry Project said, hey, we're looking for a location in Chicago. You'd be interested? I said, sure. And I figured that'd be a good way to, for low cost to kind of get your name out there, kind of keeping my capitalist hat on. But it didn't take long after that started to just realize what kind of impact it had. The people who came into our stores and so thankful about it. Dang, I can't believe you guys are doing this. It's free. I'm like, well, hey. So that just kind of started the ball rolling. We just kept doing it and doing it at different locations. And I found out about this wonderful organization, Laundry Cares, that, I knew about the CLA and been involved on a local level for years. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting. And then when the literacy thing, I'm like, well, this would be a perfect fit. I have so many children coming in there and, what do they have to do? Besides playing hide and seek, running around and causing problems with customers and putting everyone in danger, let's put one of these centers in. And it's as you can see from behind me there, we did one, and it's been great. The kids love it. We've been fortunate to hook up with a number of outfits. Play Smart Literacy out of Chicago with Michelle have been a great partner over the last couple years, coming a couple days a week at various times to do reading activities and art activities. They've come to our free laundry days that we have. We have 1 or 2 a year. It just gives, it's just a great feeling to be able to give back and be part of the community, not just, somebody from outside coming in just trying to make a buck.
Well, it's so well said. And another thing I've noticed, Paul, is that you have great staff. You have great laundromat attendants in there. And I noticed that they kind of hold their head a bit higher and they have a little more pride with their workplace because you're engaged in this work. So I think there's also a employee satisfaction and employee retention aspect to that work as well. So thank you, Paul. I'm going to move on to Ala Elbana. Ala built his first laundromat 19 years ago, along with his father, and now with his wife, Amy, they now have 5 Bubbles Are Us locations, each of which has been designed with community in mind, and free laundry days and our RPL centers. And as we start the conversation, Ala, we can look at a picture from one of the free laundry day events at your location on this next slide. And there's Dad, there's Amy. So Ala, I mean, clearly community involvement has been a central part of your brand at Bubbles R Us. And so can you tell us why you've made early childhood literacy a priority for you and how you've hooked up with the Elizabeth Public Library to be a partner with you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thank you, Brian. And, just really quick, wanted to thank everyone for this opportunity and having me on here and all the great work. It's amazing to see so many people come together for this purpose. The early childhood literacy program is near and dear to me from personal experiences. I actually immigrated to this country when I was 7 years old with my parents from Egypt. And when I came to the United States, I didn't know how to read or write in English. And there's actually a story that I tell my children all the time. It's one that was pretty horrific back then, but as I look at it now, I think it's shaped who I am and why I do what I do. I was in 3rd grade and we were doing arts and craft, and I had a little Elmer's glue bottle and it was clogged. And so I tried to unclog it with my pencil and the point broke off in there. The teacher thought I was trying to glue my point into the pencil. And so she pointed at the sharpener and said, "Oh, we have sharpeners here in the US and you can sharpen your pencil." And I didn't know how to communicate. And I couldn't communicate to her that I wasn't trying to glue my point back. I was simply trying to unclog my glue. And naturally, all the children laughed at me. And, it was a horrific experience to not be able to communicate. And, at the time I was in 3rd grade and I didn't think that it would shape who I am, but it really did. And it things like this are what impact who we are as we get older. And it was because of that small experience that I vowed to always help the community and always help the children to be able to read and write and communicate. And, before yourself and Brian Grell reached out to me about Laundry Cares and introduced me to the literacy programs, I've always tried and thought of ways that I could leverage the laundromat businesses to help the community. And so it's honestly been a breath of fresh air to now be able to do what I've always wanted to do and have an entire army behind me. And you brought up the Elizabeth Public Library. About 2 years ago, right before COVID, we partnered with the Elizabeth, New Jersey Public Library, and we're doing something called Story Time in my Elizabeth, New Jersey laundromats, where we'll have every month somebody from the public library come over and read stories with the children to help them get used to reading and to actually start to enjoy reading and to take it on as a hobby. And it's great. We've done it one time. Unfortunately, COVID has slowed us down a little bit, but the one time that we did it, it was awesome. It was really, again, just amazing to see the children come and be so engaged in reading and hearing this story time. And the staff of the public library are just terrific with children. And then you see the faces on the parents as well. You see the smiles, you see their reaction. And this is what's important, right? To be able to give back to the communities. And it's amazing that, like I said, now we have an entire army that can assist us to do it.
Oh, wow, that's amazing testimony, and paying it forward and taking that personal experience is just incredible. Well, speaking of library partnerships, we've only got a couple minutes left to go. So I'd like to talk to a couple of library professionals from Denver. And why did I pick Denver? Well, we just had a free laundry and literacy day last month, and we had Lupita Ramos and Sarah McNeil with us. So why don't I invite them both on screen with me? We can manage that just to get into a couple of these questions. I'll start with Lupita. You're coming to us from the early learning department at Denver Public Library, and you were part of our free laundry day event a few weeks ago. I just would love to hear from you, what makes laundromats a good fit from the perspective of a library that's trying to make this outreach into the community.
Yeah, I think that any setting or any experience can be an opportunity for learning. And we know that children learn best when they are happy and they feel safe. So providing welcoming age-appropriate spaces in a public area or public or private business, in this case, laundromats, I think it's great to provide these learning opportunities for them. Thinking that maybe these families are not close to a library, or maybe they work 2 jobs and they don't have the time to bring their kids to the library. We have to meet them where they are. And in this case, if it is while they do their laundry, then we'll meet them there and do what we can to provide those learning opportunities for them.
Yeah, it just makes sense as sort of an extension of the library's reach. And Sarah McNeil, I'd love to have you come on, also from the early learning at Denver and the senior librarian. So Sarah, really basically the same question for you in our last couple of seconds that we have here. I mean, why has this laundromat outreach worked? What did you observe on site that makes you think that this has legs?
We do a lot of outreach at the library, and what made this experience different and really interesting was a lot of times we hit families at like farmers markets or places where they're moving through. But at the laundromat, we got to hang out with them for an hour while they did their laundry, right? So by the time they left, we knew their kids' ages, their kids' names. We developed real relationships. And so I have to say that was kind of an unanticipated benefit for us, that maybe we created deeper relationships than we normally do. And just exactly what Lupita said, that our mission at the Denver Public Library is to create welcoming spaces where everyone can explore and learn. And that's exactly what we did, just out in the community. And to Alad's point that there's an army of folks, like that was literally what it felt like. We got there and I was like, where did all these orange shirts come from? It was very cool to see the laundromat and all these other kind of ancillary businesses like the library, like the DJ, like the Denver preschool program show up to support families. And, families appreciate that. If you can make families' lives easier in any way, whether it's providing opportunities to connect with their kid or opportunities to make laundry day easier, they're going to be so incredibly loyal, right? Like they remember that. It means a lot. So creating those opportunities where families can engage with their kids, maybe in unexpected settings. Educational opportunities don't have to be sitting at a desk with a book. And I think it's really important to remind families that they are their kids' most important teachers, because kids need a safe, stable environment to learn. And who better to provide that than their parents, caregivers, the adults in their lives. So coming together to create that kind of supportive web around families is really meaningful, both in terms of creating relationships, but also supporting learning. So we were really excited to be a part of it.
Well, we can't thank you enough for these partnerships. Going city to city, we've gotten such an amazing response from the library community, and keep hearing some of those same themes about dwell time and reach and an extension, and this notion of learning happening everywhere. So, well, at this point, I'm running a bit long, so I'm going to kind of wrap with this next slide. What I'm showing you here is a schematic of a laundromat. I'm sure you're very excited to see that. But what I wanted to point out was that there's a family read play space specced in to this laundromat. And what we found as we get the word out and have these conversations, all of a sudden, we're trying to push these learning spaces as basic equipment, right? Washers, dryers, folding tables, reading space. It ought to be automatic. And that's really how we're continuing to scale this effort. So I really want to thank our incredible panel for sharing your stories. I know some of you are sticking around for our bonus conversation so we can hear some more of that conversation when it comes to scaling laundromats and some lessons that you might be able to take away for your everyday space. So thanks again to my panel. And I'm gonna stick around here to introduce our next presentation, because we've got more content coming at you fast and furious here. So it's my pleasure to introduce our next presentation, which is moving from designing for communities to designing with communities. And obviously that's going to be an important distinction that we're going to talk about next. And throughout the summit, we've talked about community input being critical to sharing and scaling these efforts together. And this morning, we're going to hear from experts in human-centered design will sort of help illuminate our path. And so I'd like to introduce Christy Zuber, is the founding and managing director of the Aspen Labs Network. She's an expert in the science and practice of design, has proven leadership and team building, and rolls up her sleeves in the field to test these ideas. Christy founded Aspen Labs after a 16-year tenure at Kaiser Permanente, where she started and grew human-centered design and innovation practice across 210,000 people. So she might have some things that she could share with us. Welcome, Christy. Good to have you with us.
Thank you. Good to be
next
here.
up, we've got Mike Lynn. Mike is the principal consultant and advisor, also with Aspen Labs Network. Hi, Mike. Mike has spent more than 20 years bringing a human voice to innovation and design. In the first half of his career, he worked as a brand strategist in consumer goods for major brands. And more recently, Mike has turned his focus toward design and innovation in healthcare. So we've got two experts, two leaders in this space that have more credentials and accolades than I can read here. So I'll just invite them to come on and share their insights. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much. We are so honored. You all have managed to pull together an amazing roster of people. So we're really, really humbled. So thank you guys. We are excited to get started today, and Mike will get that into presentation mode. So first we wanted just to start with what we're going to talk about today. And that's really, we're going to talk about designing with communities versus designing for communities. And that might seem like, what in the world is the difference between those? There's actually a subtle but really important difference, and we want to unpack that some for you. So before we get started, we'll tell you a little bit about us, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. Mike and I have been doing work in this space for several decades now. And, we have had the opportunity to work with people, from patients in healthcare settings to tribal communities, to early childhood ed. So in many different spaces, this is where we got our start, which was in the healthcare setting. So you heard some of those stories today. One of the things that I wanted to bring up when we're doing this work is it's really about creating change through this approach. Proud moment we had, right, Mike, was when our work was featured in the Harvard Business Review. That's when you know, like, you've made it and you're actually legitimate. And that's what you can see on the left-hand side. That's the Harvard Business Review featured our work, and it was called Innovation on the Front Lines. And the reason that really makes us proud, beyond it being HBR, is that it was really about the way in which we did the work and how we included and involved and did things with people, with the clinicians providing the care, with the patients receiving the care. So that's what we're going to unpack with you all a little bit today.
Thanks, Christy. And thank you guys for having us. We were invited to kind of share our insights and experience with authentically listening and co-designing with people, and share our thoughts about what that looks like in action. And at Aspen Labs, we have a mantra, if you will, and that we, in terms of the way we practice design, which is nothing, what we call nothing about me without me. And I think you guys have heard this as a kind of theme, throughout the last 3 days, from the way people include patients and families to design incredible inclusive playgrounds, to transforming urban environments, transforming the laundromats, libraries, playgrounds, and so forth. And that's what really today is all about. And today we're going to share three things with you guys. Christy's going to talk about empathy and co-design and why that is so important, and what do we mean by empathy and co-design. And we've also been asked to share kind of what does it look like and feel like in practice. So, can you give us an under the hood view of, when you're doing this, what does it look like for the people doing the work in this kind of way? And lastly, we have some steps. We've curated some approaches and tools and methods so that as you kind of leave this wonderful series from these past 3 days, we arm you guys with some tools to engage with all the different stakeholders, partners, and families, and parents and kids in this kind of way. Back to you, Christy.
All right. So, this slide, I think the statement says it all, right? People are complex. And, as we're doing this work, engaging with this work, I think that probably resonates with all of us here. People are very complex. They're beautifully and wonderfully complex. If you've ever been in any kind of relationship, you know this to be true, whether it's your a husband, a wife, a partner, a sibling, you have children, you work with teams and colleagues. People are complex, and that's what makes it really wonderful. It's also what makes it a little bit tricky when you're trying to lead change. It's not mechanical, it's very dynamic. And the things that we want to talk with you today will help to unpack this a little bit, because often there's what people might say, but there's what they think, feel, and do that actually might be a little bit different. And so we want to give and talk about what we've learned over time, over the past 20 years of doing this, and some tools that are very simple and really straightforward to get you started on your journey as well. So let's kind of imagine, if you will, let's imagine that you're a bike maker. So if you think about you're a bike manufacturer, so when you think about your bike and your teammates and your company that's making this bicycle, you probably will think of a bicycle a little bit like this, which is all the parts and pieces, all the technicalities, all the ways that things are actually connected together. So, what department is working on what? How do these things kind of clip in together? Insert bike for libraries, for laundromats, all these things that have many moving parts and moving pieces. When you're running those operations, this is often sort of the technical view you have of the product or service that you're offering. However, if you stop for a minute and think about people that utilize those services, it might be more like this. This is very different than the technical view of the bike, right? This encapsulates the hopes and the dreams and the challenges and the fears and the partnerships that go on behind the use of that bike. It provides context into their lives. So this is really where empathy comes in. This is where it shines. We're getting out of our technical specifications and we're getting into the because we're all here because we want to do work. But I want to tell you, it's also really important from a business standpoint. So we know from business means, if we go to the next slide, that empathy and doing design-driven business work isn't just important from an empathy, wholehearted standpoint. It's also really important from a business standpoint. So this is a snapshot of companies that are considered design-driven companies that are also on the S&P 500. And what this is showing us is those companies that are design-driven companies actually outperform those that are not by 211%. So there's a real business impact to this. So as we talk about empathy a little bit more, empathy is wonderfully dynamic. Empathy helps us actually strengthen connections. It does a host of things for us as individuals, as teams, as companies. And empathy actually has two kind of main parts to it. There's the cognitive empathy. If you think about kind of the head-based empathy, that's taking someone else's perspective. How do you do that? How do you get in someone else's shoes if you've never actually walked in their shoes? Talk to them about that. What's that like? How do you understand their feelings? And then there's that emotional empathy, that sharing that experience. Sometimes when you feel that distress that comes from someone else's pain, and that pull that you feel inside of that willingness to actually do something and help someone else. When we talk about empathy and we talk about how you do that, listening differently is one of those big things that comes into play with empathy. So this is an example. You learn your best lessons, I think, when you learn the hard way, right? So Mike and I, this was one of our very early projects in the healthcare space, and we're working to try to reduce medication errors. And so we went out and went into hospitals, and we asked nurses, who are the ones that are delivering the medications, getting it to patients, checking it, making sure it's okay, kind of all the technicalities around that. And we said, so what are the problems that you face in this? It's called medication administration. What are the challenges you face in this? And boy, we got a really rich bit of feedback back, which is basically nothing. We work hard and get it done. So, what do you do with that? So we actually employed one of the techniques that that we recommend for you all as well, and we have in the toolkit for you all, is we did a draw your experience. So we said, would you draw for us what it looks and feels like to give medications? And the pictures on the right, I don't know about you guys, but does that look like that's nothing? We just kind of work hard and get it done. When you look at those pictures, you can feel the stress that they are feeling. And, in the words noted in there, chaotic, interruptions, unclear process. So this really gave us a great anchor to be able to then interview them and start asking open-ended questions about, what does this mean? What do you mean when you say chaotic? Why is the hair standing on its end? Tell me a little bit more about that so that we can really understand what this process is about a little bit more. So kind of continuing on with that, that's a bit of, when we talk about shifting from designing for to designing with. Designing for is great. It's nothing wrong with designing for. Designing for is sort of it's more of the classical traditional way that when we engage with people that we do, which is we come in sort of from an outsider's perspective, and we study a group of people and we create insights about them. It might be some report about them. And we publish and we share what we've learned. So that's great. And that's very useful. What we want to challenge ourselves with is thinking about, what does it actually look like when we're designing with people? So that's what we would call co-design. And that's really that empathy-driven, creative problem-solving process. And if you look at the difference in those two pictures that are on the right, the top one, you're kind of coming in from an outsider's perspective. That bottom one, you're actually sitting around in a circle, understanding, having conversations, bringing in tools into that engagement and designing things together. Let me give you a little bit of an example of that. So continuing on with the story about medication. So this is a true story here. So when we went out and we talked about, observed all these nurses and got, feedback, had them draw those pictures, we came up with, kind of some of those insights from those stories. And then we brought nurses and hospital administrators and doctors and patients all together. And we said, can you help us now brainstorm different ideas and prototypes and things that'll help with this medication administration process? So one of the nurses that you can see here took a bunch of paper and Sharpies and stuck an apron on her and taped across the front, "Leave me alone." Now you might wonder, what in the world does that have to do with medications? Actually, a lot. One cause of errors when you're giving medications in the hospital is actually distractions. And so she did a skit. And in the skit with her team, every time someone would talk to her while she was, pretending like she was in the hospital giving medication, she'd point to this and say, "Leave me alone." And everyone's kind of laughing like, you could never do that. But you know what? There's something interesting in that. She was demonstrating what her ideas were in that skit, which are actually pretty powerful. So we said, well, how would we do this? How would we ever bring this kind of "leave me alone" on an apron into a hospital setting? What would we do? So what we actually did is we took that idea, that nugget of that idea, and in the next slide, we can show you, we actually went out into back into the hospital setting, and we are leveraging here the power of one person, one test, one time. We also often say $5 in 5 minutes. And, as I go through this, I would love to hear you all chat and talk about, are there some ways that you've prototyped things in a really low fidelity, easy, quick way, kind of that $5 in 5 minutes kind of thing. So what we did in our $5 in 5 minutes is we went out to Home Depot and we bought a construction vest. And that's what you can see where it says May. So that's a construction vest. We brought it out into a hospital. we asked a nurse, can you please put on this construction vest? And this is the signal, the visible signal that you're giving medication. So everybody around you knows something different's happening. And then the idea was eventually when you would have something physical on, that people would know, oh, you're giving medications, I need to leave them alone. But that didn't exist yet. So we acted out the policy, which means somebody like me, and if you can see me on camera, we literally walked around her. And if somebody came up to ask her a question, we'd say, I'm sorry, would you mind, holding on your question? She's giving medications right now. We want it to be done safely. And they'd say, 99 times out of 100, sure, no problem, no problem. So she continued to give her medications and we debriefed afterwards. How was that? And she said, it was great. I would never wear this, but I got my medications done on time. It was safe. There's something to this. So we continued iterating. So we changed it from a vest to a sash, easier to get on and off. One of our team members, his wife sewed it. She made sashes for the church. She sewed it for us. We tried that out and she said, great. I feel like I want a beauty pageant. Need something a little slicker, a little sleeker. So we took a piece of vinyl, couldn't sew it. So we put a magnet on the end of it, tried that out, worked out the workflow. The woman who tried it then said, this is great because I actually need to be able to clean it. So, we learned something new. We need to be able to clean this thing. Kept iterating and eventually we ended up with a whole new way that we gave medications, a visible signal. And this was the kind of thing that we were able to spread and save lives because now we had a new way, a new safer way that was created with people to deliver medication safely. And it was done really through the power of one.
Thanks, Christy. The other thing that we've learned over the years is that it's important to dream big, but it's actually much more important to start small when you're co-designing with your with people. And the kind of what you see here is we were trying to figure out what nurses needed to coordinate and room patients in one of our at our clinics. And actually the most important picture here is the one on the left that I want to turn your attention to. When we are co-designing people, we often talk about the importance of starting with really low fidelity prototypes. And what you see here is a nurse with a poster board with tape she taped together a grid and with Post-it notes to show us what kinds of information she needed to room patients well and how that information needed to move and change as she kind of went about her workflow. And so that so that she could show us and not just tell us about what she needed. And this kind of low fidelity prototyping, the thing that we want to impress upon everyone here is that it's really important because it levels the playing field and allows people to participate in the design process with you. And another example here, this was another project that we did where we were trying to create a waiting room notification system for our patients. And whether you're there's waiting rooms everywhere, whether hospitals, WIC clinics, reception areas, different places, and people hate waiting. And one of the things that at hospitals in particular is that for people like elderly folks, for example, it's especially anxious because they feel like they can't even get up to use a bathroom. They literally sit in front of the door waiting to be called. And the thing that we really wanted to kind of, the message we wanted to leave with this story is that oftentimes in prototyping things in this way with people, it's being open to surprises and delight, and actually paying attention to that. A lot of times when you're trying these things out and testing them, you end up seeing benefits. For example, on the picture very, very right, when we started trying this, we started giving notifications to patients on their phone. We started seeing them disappear from our waiting rooms. They were waiting outside. And that's something we had never thought about, and we never would have thought about. And it only came about because we were trying this with people.
Thanks, Mike. And we have had a couple questions. I just want to quickly address some of them. When you hear us talking about these approaches and these tools, we have already at this point, we've looked at, are there existing solutions that should be out there? Are there best practices? Those things have been addressed and put in place. So this is when we're still kind of struggling in this complex space of, we still need to make some changes and we need things to be better. And so what now? So what are we doing now? We often talk about, can you replicate, improve, or innovate? So if there's some great practice to replicate, just replicate it. But if there are solutions that seem to be missing and you're still looking for changes, these are great tools to start to do that. So kind of getting to this building up part. So this gets into when we talk about designing with people. And I think, to the story Mike just told, Sarah and Lupita with the Denver Public Library, they said unexpected benefits, which I thought that was a great thing. When you're doing the work, be open, you'll find unexpected benefits. So when you're going into this gear of building up people, we want to kind of share a little bit of an example. We were working with an organization to address some systemic racism issues across the organization, and the leadership was on board of how do we start to dismantle some of this? How do we know what the experience is, the lived experience of the Black employees here? And so there was a broad group of people across this particular community that was a part of it. The bringing in and building up people, we asked for volunteers. We got a subset of that community that we brought on as co-facilitators with us, which meant, that's what you can see on the left here, that's our co-facilitator crew. And they actually helped us as we were refining, what kinds of methods are we going to use? Are we hearing the messages right? How do we communicate the messages back? Will you communicate the messages with us? Will you actually help to lead some of these sessions? We'll work with you to build the skills. So some really cool stuff of making it so that it's the community members themselves that are helping to drive this. So if we go to the next slide. They helped us refine a lot of different messages. These are some of those that were really authentically resonating with the community and were representative of what their experiences had been. We also we worked together to do prototyping. So again, we keep talking about low fidelity, easy ways to be able to tackle things. This is an example of that. Some of the ideas, formal mentoring program is one of them. You can see, they sketched out what it would be. They acted out that possible solution, but many, many things were generated by the community, and those facilities, those activities were led by the community themselves. We'll go to the next slide. And at the end of the day, really what this led to was a very different way of kind of embracing what had happened, because it wasn't just something someone else had come in and done for them. It had been done with them as real co-leads and co-facilitators. So this is actually something that one of their leaders had posted out on social media. And so we just want to spend 10 seconds and just get a peek inside of the actual session itself that they posted. All right, so let's do some key takeaways, and we'd love to know, do you all have takeaways, not just from the session that are really sticking with you? So here's some of our key takeaways. One, listen differently. Pause, stop. We did the draw your experience, the way we ask questions. Listen differently, take those in and be curious. Prototype with your community. That's a great way of not just getting what people say, but what they actually do, how they interact with something. And sometimes it's really the simplest ideas are the most impactful. Figure out what people want and need, and then how you actually can work together to make that work. You can start small, the power of one. Low fidelity prototyping helps you do that. $5 in 5 minutes. What can you do in $5 in 5 minutes? You can dream big, and we encourage you to dream big, but you can start small. Share your failures. We do this a lot of, we tried this, and this, and man, that didn't work. Where do we go now? Because that really shows you're learning and you're evolving, and you learn just as much from your failures as you do your successes. And be curious and open to insights and surprises. We sometimes talk about having like the mind and the eye of a child. Can you come in with that open kind of curiosity?
Great. Thank you, Christy.
Yeah.
And so with our remaining 5 minutes, I think the question is now, so how do we get started working in this way with parents and families in our own communities? And as an aside, we did put together a guide. So everything we'll share with you at this point. There's a 3-page guide in the conference app. We encourage you guys to download it as a resource. And so, yeah. And I think as you go forward, I think what we say is that we encourage everyone to really use the built environment as your design studio and work and design with your community members as design partners. And whether that's the park, the laundromat, the subway stations and bus stops, be out in the world designing rather than being in a conference room or and do that with people. This actually is from our own experience. This is actually not easy. It takes real courage and humility to design with people and to start from a place of empathy, to take other people's perspectives and to share in people's emotional experiences. And also, it's not easy because there's a lot of ambiguity involved because you're putting people at the center of what you're doing, and a lot of times the path forward is not clear. And so, but I think, from our experience, we've learned that invariably, it's worth taking the time to do that because it prevents you from having to go back and do rework. And you actually end up spending a lot more time with people, designing with people, as opposed to being in meetings trying to figure out what to do. For those of you who find it helpful to have structure and process, there is actually a tried and true process around co-design. There's typically 4 steps. It starts with discovery. And again, it involves understanding the people you're designing for and their lived experiences. It involves experiencing it with fresh eyes, and then involves taking all that, everything you've learned, and framing up the opportunities in a way that is from the perspective of the people you're designing for. The second step after that is typically an ideation type of step. And we would encourage you guys, if you're doing this, to create ideas together with your community and design those ideal experiences together. And then once you've done that, the third step is, again, as we've kind of illustrated, is prototyping things, trying them in real live environments, testing it, starting small and doing that, trying out your ideas together with the people that you're designing with, learning together and iterating that together. And then lastly, then start to think about the ideas and how they come together, and then start to worry about how to operationalize things, how do you run it, sustain it, and stuff like that. And for each of these steps, there are a slew of methods and approaches and tools, and we're not going to share every single one of them, but what we have done is curate the ones that are that we found to be the most simple and also the most useful. So here's just some simple tools to get you started. You've heard over the last 3 days about the importance of talking with parents and families. And when you do, one thing we suggest is that you is approaching this from an open-ended perspective, what we call open-ended questions. Open-ended questions are really helpful because they help reveal surprising mental models, problem-solving strategies, and also people's hopes and fears. So examples of this is, instead of asking people, are you happy? Ask them what makes them happy. Instead of asking people, are you close to your family? Ask them, how has your family affected you? Another thing that we would encourage you guys to do is what we call empathy walk. So this involves experiencing what people experience for yourself. So in the case of, for example, this looks like getting down on your knees at different locations and seeing what it looks what the environment looks like for children or for kids. One of our favorite things to do is to give the people that we're designing with disposable cameras and have them take pictures and ask them to take pictures of their lived experience. So things like, hey, this is where I work. This is where I live. I wish I had these things. This is something I need. This is something I love. This is beautiful to me. And because what we're really trying to understand is people and how they relate to their lived experiences, and simple prompts like that really helps to give you ways to engage people along those lines, and gives you something to talk to people about and to understand how their lived experiences impacts them. Back to you, Christy.
Yeah, we are back with the Draw Your Own Experience. So we have included that in our affectionately called section, Toolapalooza, that we're going through with you guys. It's also on the app. We've had a few people ask the questions. So on the app, you can download this whole thing as a toolkit. So Draw Your Experience, we mentioned this earlier about how we had people draw their experience. Another kind of tip here is, often we come in somewhere and we've got paper and, markers and pens, and we'll say, this might sound a little bit weird, but would you mind drawing your experience with, waiting at a laundromat, with trying to find, books for your kids to read, with, finding your way around the community, whatever the question is that you have, it's a great way to do that. And sometimes we'll do, can you draw your best experience of that and your worst experience of that? That's another way that you could use it, and then compare them and ask them questions about it. So paper, markers, colored pencils, and some humility will get you a long way with Draw Your Own Experience. Another one that we wanted to queue up for you is called empathy mapping. And you can use this in a number of different ways. And this is literally just going through and thinking of a particular person, a person type. Let's say it's someone coming in and, doing their laundry. So you might have, we might often see, a mother of 3 coming in and doing her laundry, for example. You would kind of take a piece of paper and mark out the quadrants, and it could be, what are they thinking and feeling? What are they seeing, hearing, doing, so forth. And then you just start writing out what you have observed, what you have experienced. You can go out and interview some people and bring some of those insights back and keep filling out this empathy map. And it really helps you to get this holistic view. It's a great low fidelity, easy research tool to get yourselves in the shoes of someone else. And you can imagine, maybe putting these up or laying them across a table or showing them on a screen with colleagues and comparing lots of people together. So an empathy map's a great tool for that.
And then the next kind of approach we want to share with you is actually a fairly, is something that everyone has talked about, is in observing people and just being a fly on the wall. There actually is a framework that anthropologists use when they do observations, and it's called AEIOP. And and this allows allows you to observe in a very active way. So for example, when you're observing people in an environment, how are people using that environment? What's the role of that environment? What objects are being used or not used? And how are people engaging with objects? Are there workarounds you can see with the way people are using objects? And also noticing people. Who are the people that you're observing? What do you notice? Can you observe any extreme behaviors or beliefs as you're watching? And along those lines, what are the activities that people are engaging in? And what are the routines and interactions? And are there any special interactions between people and objects? Again, this is a very helpful framework when you're observing in situations. A lot of times people feel like when they're observing, they're just sitting there watching, but there are a lot of things that you can actively pay attention to.
Yeah.
I think this is me. Sorry, Christy. and another one that we wanted to kind of share with you and queue up is journey mapping. And this is a method called journey mapping. And it's a dynamic way of visualizing a person's experience to understand kind of their needs and pain points. And we love this. So over the years, we found this to be one of the most helpful tools in our kind of toolkit when we're thinking about people and trying to understand what their needs are. And basically, it's very simple. And basically what you do is you start by identifying whose journey you're trying to understand. You list out all the steps in their journey and all the different interactions. And then you kind of sketch out the highs and lows of that experience. So that's kind of what you see on the bottom of that image here. There, that person is kind of sketching out highs and lows. And then and then you work with the people you're designing with, to reflect on and discuss the kind of joys and needs and the pain points along key moments of that journey, and work to really understand, what key moments really matter for people. And then I think, Christy and I gave you lots of examples of prototyping and what that looks like. And I think, if we were to leave you one message around prototyping and as a way of co-designing with people, the key message we would leave with you is that with paper, pen, tape, and people, and again, 4 very simple things, you can co-create just about anything. And to that point, with those 4 things, you can co-create and prototype tools. It could be technology, workflows, and how interactions happen through time. You can try out new roles in particular services. You can mark up and try out new space configurations and walk through them. And so again, this is the power of kind of the low fidelity ways of designing with people is just so powerful with some very simple tools.
Dream big, start small.
That's right. And I think the last thing we want to leave you guys with is just that, I think of the 20 years that Christy and I have worked together and been doing this, I think, I think what we've learned is that, there really is power in trying things together with people. And we can't underscore the power of that enough. When we were, these images is from an instance where we were co-designing nursing shift changes at hospitals with our nurses. And afterwards, one of the nurses came up to us and told us, "You don't even know, it's so rare that people tell us why we're doing what we're doing. And usually they just say, here, this is what we're doing now." And it's even more rare that people ask us, what we think about the idea and how we can work together to make it better. And so again, if nothing else, I think this is the key thing that we wanted to leave you guys with.
Absolutely. Well, great. Well, thank you guys so much for your time and attention. We've had an awesome time visiting with you all and checking out the comments in the chat. So thank you so much for that. So now, actually, I'm thrilled to introduce Chelsea Clinton, Vice Chair of the Clinton Foundation. And she'll be sharing some remarks with us to highlight the importance of creating learning-rich spaces for families. And excitedly, she'll also announce the 2021 Laundry Literacy Coalition Award winners who have really made a positive impact in their communities, and we are grateful for you guys. So this group will include businesses and community leaders, and they really represent much of what we've discussed in our own session that Mike and I were talking through about really connecting meaningfully and authentically with the children and families that we're all here to serve.
Hi, I'm Chelsea Clinton, Vice Chair of the Clinton Foundation, and it's just wonderful to be here at the Too Small to Fail and the Laundry Cares Foundation's 4th annual summit. The last year and a half has certainly presented new and intensified challenges, especially when it comes to caring for our children, and I just have been consistently inspired by the relentless passion, compassion, and commitment of so many of the organizations and people who are here with us today on this Zoom and at this virtual summit. We certainly all know that we each have a role to play in creating meaningful, joyful, language-rich, productive learning spaces for kids and families, and I'm so grateful to all of your continued engagement in this work. I want to give a special thank you to Michelle Mason for your opening remarks today and to the Laundry Cares Foundation for your longstanding partnership. Today's discussions have been really focused on scale, innovation, inclusion, and what does it mean to truly listen empathetically and to truly think differently about designing with rather than for parents, caregivers, and families. At the Clinton Foundation, all of our work is predicated on the simple belief that everyone deserves a chance to succeed and that everyone has a responsibility to act, and that when we all work together, we all do better. And one of the things that we try to do around all of our initiatives is to forge creative and sometimes unlikely cross-sector partnerships between the public and the private sector, between industry and philanthropy, between parents, caregivers, and nonprofit organizations and advocacy groups. It's what we think will come up with better solutions and to ensure that those solutions are more sustainable. And so on that note, I'm excited to be here today for so many reasons, including to announce the recipients of the Laundry Cares Literacy Coalition Awards. Each year, the Laundry Literacy Coalition is proud to present awards for outstanding and often innovative service. The awards are one of many ways to honor the creative commitment, powerful partnerships, and extraordinary early learning moments happening for families across the country in everyday settings. This year, we are very pleased to announce winners in the following categories: Exceptional Laundromat Owner, Outstanding Partnership between a laundry owner and an early literacy provider, and Extraordinary Early Literacy Work. This year's award for Exceptional Laundromat Owner goes to Michael Gregory of Pete Gregory Laundries in Denver, Colorado. Michael has created a special family read, play, and learn room in his laundromat and reaches deep into the heart of his community to provide essential resources along with early learning opportunities. His is the first laundry-free day to offer free diapers to families, and in fact, over 6,500 diapers were distributed during that 4-hour free day. Goodness, that was a mouthful. Congratulations, Michael, on your award, and thank you for your commitment to your community as a business owner and for proving what is possible. Next, our 2021 Partnership Award goes to Paul Hansen, owner of Su Nueva Lavanderia in Chicago, Illinois, and Michelle Deneen White of Play Smart Literacy. Together, this dynamic duo offers play-based early literacy kits and backpacks that promote families learning together through healthy play. Play Smart Literacy offers joyful, culturally affirming kits filled with take-home books and toys, and Michelle and her team distribute those kits, offer programs and support, and do so much more through Paul's 5 laundromats on the south side of Chicago. Congratulations, and thank you, Michelle and Paul, for proving what's possible. And last, though certainly not least, the Outstanding Service Award for Early Literacy Programming this year goes to Denver Public Library. Denver Public Library provides programming and laundromats that is bilingual and also offered in American Sign Language. Instilling a love of reading, supporting families where they are, and offering additional services such as universal pre-kindergarten registration are just some of the many ways that the Denver Public Library provides extraordinary service to children and families in Denver, Colorado, including with laundromats. Congratulations, and a big thank you to everyone at Denver Public Library for your wonderful work and commitment. These are some of the examples of just some of the fantastic partners we worked with over the past year and over the past many years. And I'm just profoundly grateful that the work continues to grow along with new partners, ever proving what is possible. Thank you all very much. I am now delighted to announce a new partnership and commitment, the first with Kiwanis International and Penguin Young Readers. To highlight our first commitment, I'd like to invite Stan Soderstrom, Executive Director of Kiwanis International, to our Zoom screen. Stan's background is incredibly impressive and includes a variety of community-based and global work in the public and private sector. And he's led the work of Kiwanis International and the Kiwanis Children's Fund since 2010.
Thank you, Chelsea, and it's certainly good to meet you. I'm happy to be able to share a little bit about our organization. Kiwanis International is a global community of clubs, 16,000 of them in more than 80 nations. We have members all around the world and communities trying to make a difference, especially for children and for youth. We specifically work closely with key clubs in high schools and Circle K and university campuses, but we also have leadership programs for middle school students, elementary school students, and even adults who live with disabilities. But in every community, we're trying to be impactful and make a difference primarily for children, and maybe fighting hunger, improving literacy, and offering adult mentorship and guidance. And our clubs collectively host more than 150,000 service projects and programs every year.
It's amazing, Stan. Well, thank you so much for sharing more about your organization. Certainly, I hope that for anyone who may not have known about Kiwanis before today, they'll now think about your extraordinary reach of thousands of clubs and many hundreds of thousands of service hours mobilized and think, oh, I need to learn more about Kiwanis and see how I can get engaged. And certainly I know that we at the Clinton Foundation and Too Small to Fail are really excited about this new partnership together. And so hope that maybe you could share a little bit about kind of what Kiwanis and Penguin Young Readers and our amazing team at Too Small to Fail have been thinking about and what you're committing to today.
We've got over 100-year legacy of making a difference for communities and the children in those communities. But today we're really focused on healthy children, and we want children to be ready to learn when they get to school. So our causes include nutrition and education leading to literacy, and we want children to be able to not only be ready to learn when they get to school, but then ready to learn to read and read to learn for life. So right now we have thousands of clubs who are engaged in literacy projects, from members serving as mentors to clubs, providing books to schools or to students or to pre-K, or school supplies, where school supplies are in short supply. And maybe some of the examples of our projects would best tell our story. Right now, the Kiwanis Club in Richmond, California is creating a story trail project in a local community park, where they're working with a playground partner, Landscape Structures, to produce panels depicting pages from storybooks that'll be installed in the park that'll combine, obviously, the opportunity to learn to read with healthy exercise in the park. And the Kiwanis Club in Muncie, Indiana is celebrating its 100-year anniversary this year by providing a reading oasis at every Muncie elementary school. And the Reading Oasis provides a fun place for hands-on reading in the schools, complete with kid-friendly rugs and beanbag chairs and hundreds of the most popular books, so that kids can not only learn to read in a very comfortable environment, but they can take home the books that they want to take home. And a lot of these children don't have books in their home normally. And the Kiwanis Club's job then is to replenish the books or to serve as help, learn to read on certain school days. We have another club right now that is working in Medina, Ohio, that's building reading centers in local laundromats. And this is the one project that gets me more excited than anything, because I think there are opportunities to reach thousands and thousands of children who wouldn't otherwise have a reading opportunity, and putting books in their hands at a time when they have time to sit and read while mom or dad are doing the laundry and waiting for the clothes to dry. We think that there's an opportunity in a lot of communities for our Kiwanis clubs to enhance their participation in literacy programs and projects.
Well, Stan, as you said, that was just a few examples of the work that's already happening with Kiwanis clubs, and clearly highlights all the work that could and will be possible kind of through your continued commitment to early childhood literacy and to really bringing resources to kids and family all across the country. And we are so proud to be in partnership with you, and so incredibly grateful for Kiwanis's leadership and Stan for your leadership on this vital issue that certainly matters to me as a mom, but really should matter to all of us, because it is so fundamentally about our shared future. So Stan, thank you so much. And thank you for being here on Zoom with me today.
Well, we're very excited about working together as well. So working with Too Small to Fail and the Laundry Cares Foundation. More information will be shared at the 2022 Kiwanis International Convention in Indianapolis. But for now, we imagine providing millions of books to children each year and creating hundreds of reading centers and shared community spaces all over. And, the sky's the limit here. I think we can do some great things working together.
Absolutely. Well, Stan, thank you so much. And please thank everyone at Kiwanis for all of us, for all that you're doing. And now I'd like to introduce another friend and partner, Stephanie Sable, Executive Director of Brand and Business Management at Penguin Young Readers. Hi, Stephanie. So nice to see you.
First, I think it would be great just for our audience to hear about Penguin Young Readers and kind of what is your mission broadly and how are you connected to the work that we're talking about here today?
Sure. Penguin Young Readers publishes about 500 children's books a year for children ages 0 to 18 and even beyond, since we know a lot of adults even like to read children's books.
I mean, are you looking at me?
Yes, I am. Our mission is really encapsulated in one phrase, and that's that we believe that every child deserves books. And we know that many children do not actually have access to bookstores or money to buy books. And that's why it's always been a priority for us to make sure we are getting books into the hands of these particular children. And we're so grateful to have partners like Too Small to Fail who can help us with this mission because it is really important to what we all believe in.
And for people who may not be aware, although I'm sure some of our participants are, for the last 4 years, Penguin Young Readers, Too Small to Fail, and the National Diaper Bank Network have partnered to distribute children's books along with diapers to families in need throughout our Diaper Time is Talk Time initiative. And we're so incredibly thankful to our partners, our individual diaper bank partners, and to the National Diaper Bank Network for enabling us to be part of this work because we know that 1 in 3 American families struggles to provide enough diapers to keep a baby or a toddler clean, dry, and healthy. And so we're just so profoundly thankful to Penguin for your support. You've enabled us to donate more than 200,000 books through this partnership. And we are incredibly grateful and excited for you to be here to share the commitment that you're making for this upcoming year to increase access to books. Could you share a little bit more about your new commitment?
Yes, I'm very happy to. And we have so enjoyed working with Too Small to Fail and the National Diaper Bank for the past 4 years. And we're proud to announce that this year we will be donating an additional 50,000 books over the next year to be distributed to 25,000 to the National Diaper Bank again. And we know it's been a really hard year for so many families, so we're really able to get them the books and the diapers that they need bundled together. We also know that having to go to court can often be stressful and traumatic, particularly for young children. And I was so pleased to learn about the work Too Small to Fail, Laundry Cares Foundation, and the National Council for Juvenile and Family Court Judges are doing to make the family court waiting room experience a more welcoming, playful, and learning-rich environment. And we are really pleased to be able to donate 25,000 books to family court judges and others working in the court environment can share with families to take home. We know how meaningful the connection can be between family when we have a book, and we hope that these books help foster those connections between families, caregivers, and will create a more joyful language-rich environment for families at home.
Oh, Stephanie, thank you so much. And please thank everyone at Penguin Young Readers for us. We are so incredibly grateful for Penguin's generous and continued support and partnership now over many years. And hopefully this partnership will just continue to grow into the future, because we know that the number of books in the home is one of the strongest predictors of academic achievement. And so I think all of us need to do all that we can to ensure that more kids have access to more books in more places, including at home, as well as kind of wherever families may visit or spend time together. So just incredibly thankful to you and to Penguin Young Readers. And I want to thank Stan again for all the work that he and Kiwanis are doing. I want to just say, we know that while Stephanie and Stan are like on the screen today, that kind of you are representing hundreds and thousands of people that are in your organizations who I know are also equally committed to doing all that they can to support children and families. And for anyone joining us, I hope that these conversations aren't just informative, but are also inspiring as you think about kind of what more you can be doing in partnership with your local Kiwanis Club, in partnership with Penguin and other publishing companies, in partnership with authors and kind of anyone who may be kind of creating learning opportunities, engaging in learning opportunities and language-rich environments for kids and families. And certainly, as we've heard from Stephanie and Stan, and really from everyone over the last few days, there just is so much that's possible when we work together. And so again, thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Stan. Thank you, Penguin Young Readers. Thank you, Kiwanis. And really looking forward to all the work ahead.
Wow. Brian, wow, what a terrific day. What did you think?
Well, I'll let you kick off the recaps because I think I'm still digesting, but just an amazing and humbling set of commitments we just heard about.
Really terrific, and such a great day of inspiration and insight about the role that businesses and associations can play in supporting children and families. We've been so fortunate over the last 3 days to have this wonderful artist, Emily Marco, with us, who's been capturing these terrific visual representations of the conversations we've been having. And Emily, I was wondering if you might be able to share your screen so we could see some of your wonderful visual renderings of the conversations that have happened today. And, and just to recap, it was just so terrific, kick things off by learning about the powerful role that associations can play. And then we had the opportunity to, think about how they can support place-based innovations and bringing them to scale. And it was also great to get under the hood, understanding how this work has evolved with our friends in the laundromat industry. That was just so terrific to hear that conversation that you hosted, Brian. We also heard from Brian and Sarah and Cheryl about how businesses think about social impact. We had a conversation about doing well by doing good and what it means to think about a return on purpose. And then as Chelsea mentioned, cross-sector partnerships are really at the core of everything we do at the Clinton Foundation as we seek to impact change through scale. And we heard some really terrific examples of partnerships. Just so grateful to Kiwanis International and to Penguin Young Readers for these just amazing commitments that we've made. And we hope that they inspire your imagination to think about partnerships you might be able to build in your own local communities as you think about this work going forward. And of course, we were so excited by the session we just had with Aspen Labs to learn more about the process of designing with communities, not designing for communities, and the importance of thinking big and starting small at the same time. We hope you find the tools and resources that Aspen Labs provided really to be extremely useful, as well as all the other resources that are available on the app. And looking ahead, this whole conference about place-based innovation, it is one essential strategy as part of Too Small to Fail's portfolio of working to really support children and families. And we're so eager to continue this conversation with all of you going forward. On behalf of Too Small to Fail, I just want to say how grateful I am to the Coin Laundry Association and to the Laundry Cares Foundation for just, jumping right into this place-based work with us. I mean, it's just been such a wonderful partnership, and having the opportunity to innovate, to pilot strategies, to experiment, and to learn with us has just been truly phenomenal. We're eager to continue to see the scale in laundromats, which is just so exciting, and to also think about the learnings that we're making and how we might be able to apply those to other sectors as well. So lots of exciting work ahead. And with that, Brian, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, thanks, Patty. And again, this partnership has been so rewarding for us, and we appreciate you showing us the way and prodding us and pushing us all in all the best ways to keep trying new things. And we couldn't ask for a better partnership with you and your team. So let's move on to a little more good news. In the next slide, we're going to take a look at some of our giveaway winners, Patty. We got to be I always wanted to be a game show host, so here's my opportunity. So let's take a look at the next slide and get into our award winners. The winners of our Family Replay Learn kits, which are the library spaces you've seen in the photos. Congratulations to Kristen Carnes Fredrickson from Wisconsin and Connie Fields from Minnesota. Congrats, and we'd be happy to help you make sure those find their way into a laundromat near you. We also have sets of sidewalk math kits on the next slide on their way to Bobby Cronk from Missouri and Wayne Myers from Georgia. These are really fun decals that really shows that learning is happening everywhere in the laundromat and elsewhere. So congrats to Bobby and Wayne. Last but not least, on our next slide are winners of the signed book bundles. These are on their way to Julie Rice from Idaho, Lacey Creme from Michigan, and Phoebian Oyafuse from Maryland. So please enjoy these really cool book bundles, and I know that they'll find their way into the hands of kids that could really put those absolutely to use. So congrats to all of our award winners. Next, let's take a look at some of the next steps here, because again, we want to make sure that this experience that we've had together lives on past the feel good of today. We want to be building on this as we go forward. So let's think about what your commitment is. I talked a little bit about this in session 1. What is your role in this movement? What can you do, big or small, to push this work forward? Because we all have a role to play. So I encourage you to share those in the chat as we go along. Next slide, please. Yes, engagement. We have a couple of different ways for you to stay engaged. So we've just put a form in the chat where you can share some of those reflections, and we'll capture those in such a way that we can continue to share and learn from one another. We've mentioned the app quite often. Let me just repeat, it's called Spaces Summit. You can find it in your favorite app store. And there are just amazing resources that have been accumulating there. All the videos, all the presentations. Yes, for all of you asking, the slides from all of our great presenters are on the app. So make sure to make use of that very much in the future. And not everyone could be here. So if you've got a friend, a colleague, someone you think is of like mind, just ask them to download the app. They can see the whole thing and really experience it for themselves. Our team is already thinking about the 5th summit. And so with that in mind, we'd love for you to fill out the post-event survey that's on its way to you. We want to use your ideas to help co-design the next version of this, and we want to make sure that we are getting all of your input as we look at next year. Next slide, please. Got some more good stuff for you. The Laundry Cares Innovation Circle. I'm blown away by how many questions we've had about our program that have popped up in the chat. One of the ways that you can get engaged is join the Innovation Circle. This is a place to share the best practices and resources. Just drop a line to our friend Liz McChesney, liz@laundrycares.org to join that effort going forward. Next up, we've got another list of some more things that you can do. Again, this is all about turning these ideas into action. So next slide, please. Yes, with all these questions we've had over the last couple of days, we did drop a laundromat FAQ into the app resources, so please check that out if you can. But on October 6th, our team, I don't know how they did this so fast, they've created a laundromat webinar on the 6th of October about getting started with connections at the laundromat in your community. So you'll all be getting an invitation to that, and we'll take a deeper dive into some of these scaling questions that have come up here. So let's take advantage of that. You've heard us talk many times about the amazing impact of our free laundry and literacy days. So just so happens we've got another one coming up. That's December 10th in Charlotte, North Carolina, with our friends at Laundro Lab. So please, whether you're in town or out of town, please raise your hand, please volunteer. You can go to laundrycares.org/events to get all the information about the next free laundry day. More webinars, more information. So we've got one coming up on promoting neighborhood equity that you'll get an invite to, as well as taking another look at the ingredients in building these family-friendly, learning-rich environments. And if you haven't had enough, next screen, next slide, please. As I said earlier at the outset, we have a session that's starting here just a few minutes. And here's the link to join us. We're going to leave this setting and use this link to rejoin to continue the conversation, get into some of these questions and answers, and make sure that while we've got some momentum here, we keep that conversation going. So in closing, just the last few words from me, I'd like to thank the incredible crew at Advanced Events. This is not easy to pull off with speakers live and recorded and back and forth. The whole team just did an incredible job making this whole presentation look so good. So thanks to all the folks there. And certainly on behalf of Patty Miller, myself, the entire team at Laundry Cares Foundation and at Too Small to Fail, I'm sure I can speak for them that really we wrap up with a heart filled with gratitude and amazement at all the resources, the staggering amount of resources and insights that we shared over the course of these 3 sessions. It really gives us a lift and a feeling that, yes, we can continue to grow this work in everyday spaces, and really getting to the main theme of all of this, which is to make sure that the kids with the most needs, those families with the most needs, will have everyday access through everyday spaces to the resources that they're going to need to thrive. So with that, it's a wrap. Please jump over to the other Zoom room and join us for coffee and conversation. Thank you all for being with us. We'll see you next time.